you do that? How did you do that?
Welcome back everyone to another ESO build video. Today is going to be the update to the Easy Sorc. Now this has been used a lot over the last 3 years. Had an update every single patch without fail, and it's still very, very strong. Its overall design is still absolutely fine, and people have been completing all manner of content with this ever since, and still doing so today. So if you are looking for something that's easy to digest, but at the same time capable of all content, you are in the right place. Now, the focus on this particular build, the design of it overall, is to put out as much area of effect damage and bonuses to the group as well for doing so, with minimal effort in comparison to a lot of other complicated rotations, and at the same time having a healthy amount of single target as well. It's a combination of the two, but its ease of use is its main selling point. So, where you have some rotations and you'll have to spam abilities and light attacks like hell, this one's pretty straightforward. There is a learning curve to it, but it's a lot easier than most. Now, first of all, we're going to go into the stats, of course. Put a potion on, make sure our food is all active. It should be. Now, we are sitting on 37.5k max Magicka, 19k max health, which is enormous, and 10k max stamina. We are on 853 mag recovery, which is not that important at the moment, but we'll get to that later. We have 3k spell damage and 57.4% crit. However, the spell damage will actually go up inside of our rotations because of our buffs and bonuses and such, and our resistances will actually go up also. So our resistances go up to 17.7 and 14.9. Now, we have 64 points into max Magicka. We are using the Shadow Munda Stone, and of course we're using max health, max magic food. We're using the flat stuff. No recovery food required. However, if you choose to use it, that's entirely up to you. Now, I'm going to go into all the skills in detail. These will be explained, so if you are confused about any of this, don't worry, all the information is going to be here. However, if you do choose to skip this part and you ask questions in the comment section below and I've already answered them, I won't be answering them again. The content is already there, so it's your own risk if you skip, but you're welcome to do so if you want. Now, first up is Summon Twilight Tormented. This is actually a pet. This is in our Daedric Summoning skill line. It's a third ability to unlock. Starts off as Summon Winged Twilight. Morph it to the Tormentor version, not the other one, because the other one is a heal. Now, this does damage the whole time it's active to the target that you're hitting, but if you activate this ability while it is alive, you will actually give it a buff for 15 seconds. Now, this buff will increase the damage that this does to your target by up to 53%. But the enemy must be above 50% health. So, after 50% health, don't activate this again. Before 50% health, make sure you activate it every time it's about to run out, but that's in our rotation anyway. It's a really, really powerful skill. It does have a hefty amount of damage. This is why it was put on the build in recent updates. But remember, there is a condition. Don't activate this under 50% of the target's health. We'll use something else instead. Now, this does have a 1.5 second cast time initially just to spawn the pet, but it doesn't have any cast time whatsoever to activate this special ability. So just bear in mind that is something that you need to keep an eye on throughout the fight. Pay attention to the health. Now, of course, this is a pet for a sorcerer, and sorcerer pets are not fire and forget like a necromancer. They do have to be double barred in order for you to actually keep them alive. So you are going to have to put this on both bars. Next up is Daedric Tomb. This is in the Dark Magic skill line. It's a 5th ability to unlock. Starts off as Daedric Mines, morph it to Daedric Tomb. This is really, really simple, although quite expensive. This puts 3 mines on the ground, and when an enemy touches them, they blow up. Now, the good thing is, some targets can actually be hit by more than one, depending on your practice and how you aim these things. You can catch 1 target per mine, or you can catch 1 with 2, and sometimes if you're really, really lucky, you can catch them with 3. But that's very, very rare, and it also takes a lot of practice. On average, you'll mostly catch them with 2. Now, this does also immobilize the targets as well, so it's a free CC. So if anything does get caught in this, it'll stand still for 2 seconds, unless it's a boss, of course. This is our main spammable as such, but we don't technically spam it. We just have this as our main bread and butter skill. So this is going to be in between our heavy attacks on our front bar, which will make more sense when we get to the rotation. But this is insane, and it also helps have the group benefit from another passive as well, which we'll get to a little bit later on. Now, Hardened Ward is next. It's in our Daedric Summoning skill line. It's the 4th ability to unlock. Starts off as Conjured Ward, morph it to Hardened Ward. Now, this is a damage shield. It does scale off of your max Magicka in terms of its overall strength, but its overall strength is capped at 60% of our max health. So the higher your health, the stronger the shield can kind of push. So if you do have buffs and bonuses from your group, this 11.5k will actually be higher, but you must have a fairly healthy magic pool for it to be able to do that. Just remember, 60% of your maximum health is the cap. Now, this is very simple. It just shields you from damage, and once that amount of damage has been taken, it will go away again. This does consider your resistances, however, so the higher your resists, obviously, the longer the shield will stay. It does have a 6-second timer, so after the 6 seconds, if you've took no damage, it will go away. But this is your kind of, uh-oh, I'm in trouble button. Very, very helpful indeed. Make sure you get this as soon as possible. Inner Light is very simple. This sits on your bar and gives you a max magic bonus and a crit bonus. This is in the Mage's Guild skill line. This is the first ability to unlock. Starts off as Mage Light, morphed to Inner Light. That 2191 crit rating is actually 10% crit chance. That's what that means. It's Major Prophecy though, so it doesn't stack with other Major Prophecies, of course. But if you have this with your potions, then of course when you switch to the back bar, if you don't have this there, you'll still keep it. They do not press this. It does have an ability, of course, which makes people visible if they're invisible. We're not using it for that because we're not in PvP, so it's irrelevant. Just never touch this skill and leave it there just for the passives. Mage's Wrath, this is our main execute. This is in the Storm Calling skill line, which is very, very handy, but it does have a condition. First ability to unlock starts off as Mage's Fury, morph it to Mage's Wrath. If you attach this to the target above 20% health, it will last for 4 seconds, and then it will disappear. If you put this on a target above 20% health and then they fall below 20% health while it's active, it will then pop. Also, if the target is already underneath 20% health, it will pop anyway. So this has a very specific condition. This is why you'll find in a lot of PvP games, especially Battlegrounds, people activate this on a target while the health is going down because they try to steal the kill because it'll pop when they go low. You can utilize this at low health or just before if you can time it properly, but essentially when this lands on the target, it will do X amount of shock damage and then explode in area of effect as well to nearby enemies, so long as the health is low. If it's not, it will just do the initial shock, it won't do the explosion, and it won't do the AoE either. So you only use this when the target is 20% or lower, technically below. Now, this here, you have to activate until the target is 50% health. This here, you don't activate until the target is below 20% health. So those are your two checkpoints to keep an eye on. After 50%, you stop casting this, and below 20%, you start casting this. Bear that in mind. Now, the ultimate is entirely up to you. Now, the Storm Atronach is actually very nice. It's from the Daedric Summoning skill line. You can morph it to whichever one you like, although I do personally prefer the Area of Effect one. But basically, this does damage the whole time it's active. And it's huge and gets in the way and gives people major berserk if they take a synergy. Only one person can take it at a time, however, but it does buff the pet and the person. So this is actually quite helpful to the group and for yourself as well for more damage output for this particular ultimate. But I tend to put on other ultimates for different situations. So Suppression Field is also absolutely fine. That is from the Dark Magic skill line. And this will actually stun enemies inside of it for 12 seconds and do damage every 0.5 seconds the whole duration it's up. This is a very, very good oh shit button. I definitely preference this over the Storm Atronach, but if you want to give people a synergy buff for 8 seconds every so often, that can also be a choice that you can make. It's entirely up to you. However, overall, I generally choose my backbar ultimate for pretty much every situation, unless I'm in trouble, in which case I use this. So this is kind of here just for stats, just for passives, which we'll get to in a moment, but the choice of which one you take is entirely up to you. Now, on the back bar, you must have Summon Twilight on both bars, otherwise it will die. You need it double barred. So that one is easy. Next up is Unstable Wall of Elements, known as Unstable Wall of Storms for this particular setup, because we're using our Lightning Staff on the back bar. This is the second ability you unlock in the Destruction Staff skill line. Starts off as Wall of Elements, morph it to Unstable Wall of Elements. Now this goes down on the ground and does damage every 1 second to enemies inside of it. And then when it expires, or you recast it, it will explode, doing damage in area of effect. Now, because we're using a Lightning Staff, this has a specific bonus to it. The Lightning Staff itself will do shock damage, of course, on this ability, and enemies caught inside of this can be concussed, because any lightning damage that you do has a chance to concuss the enemy, which is minor vulnerability. There's a status effect video in the description if you are unsure of status effects. Minor vulnerability will increase everybody's damage to those targets by 8%, and if they are concussed by any lightning damage whatsoever, including this skill, they will be knocked off balance while inside this wall. If they're knocked off balance, everyone who heavy attacks those targets will get double resources back and do 70% more damage with their heavy attacks. That's very relevant for our overall build, by the way. Really important to note those individual bonuses for that purpose of the skill. Now, next up, of course, oh, you mustn't let this ever drop off, by the way. Keep this on the ground at all times, or else your build is going to be somewhat lacking. This is required for this setup. Boundless Storms is next. This is in our Stormcalling skill line as well. Where are we here? Second ability to unlock, starts off as Lightning form, morph it to Boundless Storms. Now this will basically put you into a form of lightning, if you like, and you will do damage in area of effect every 1 second for 23 seconds. And this is shock damage as well. Now this will give you Major Resolve as well, increasing your physical resistance and your spell resistance by 5280, and you'll be granted Major Expedition for 4 seconds, so you can run faster when you initially activate this. Keep this up as an active buff, but anything anywhere near you will take damage every 1 second and you will be protected because your resistance are up. It's very simple and straightforward. This build is designed to be in the face of the enemy. You are supposed to be close, hence why this is a 5 meter radius ability. We are deliberately staying close, so then our next skill also can actually reach. This is a flex slot, but you can choose to change it if you prefer or keep it. It's entirely up to you, but I'm going to tell you the difference. Now this is in the Fighters Guild skill line, starts off as Trap Beast, morph it to Barbed Trap. This is a stamina costing ability, yes, but don't worry, we've got that covered. This will put a trap underneath the target. If it's not a boss, it can be immobilized for 2 seconds. If it is a boss, then it can't be, but you will still do the damage over time anyway. And while this damage over time persists, you will gain minor force, increasing all of your critical damage that you do by 10%. That is very, very important. However, almost every single DPS out there takes advantage of this particular minor force buff. If you don't want to do that, and you want to take advantage of a couple of other skills, you can do instead. Now, what you can do is something that we've done before, is you can put Degeneration on the bar, which will do damage over time, so it will replace your 10% crit damage overall with a 15k dot. And it will give you Major Sorcery, which we can get from our potions, but you can get it from this skill on its own if you prefer. That is a choice you can make. It is actually quite a healthy choice, especially if you've got to run in and out of mechanics a lot. And, of course, it will mean that you can use cheaper potions because you wouldn't need Major Sorcery. But, bear in mind, you would lose Minor Force. You can get Minor Force from perhaps a polite or friendly tank that is willing to give you Guard, because you can get Minor Force indefinitely without a skill from Guard. Now, like I said, most other DPS builds out there already have this built in because they don't have room for anything else and they always use Minor Force. We technically don't always use it, so we're the one person in the group that can utilize the one skill the tank doesn't always use. And we're close to the tank anyway, so that's win-win. You could put this on and get Minor Force, and your damage output, instead of being the same for swapping one skill or the other, can actually be higher. Also, you have one more option, and this is what I would personally preference overall for most content, and I would recommend most players, especially if you're fairly new, would use. And this is in the Stormcalling skill line. This is Critical Surge. Now, this does give you Major Sorcery, just like Degeneration does. So again, this is great for cheaper potion options. You can use Tripots instead of Spell Pots because we've already got Sorcery covered. And it lasts for 33 seconds. It doesn't do any damage to the targets, but it does heal you for 3300 health once a second for just doing crit damage. So here are your choices. Flat damage output if you're close, which you should be. Beast Trap will actually enhance all of your skills if you crit them. Crit Surge if you just want to survive and keep your buffs up and have cheap potions. And of course, Degeneration from the Mage's Guild skill line, which is Entropy to start off with, by the way, if you want that extra damage over time and you have someone guarding you anyway, covering the Minor Force. Those are your three options. Whichever one you choose is entirely up to you, and sometimes the situation means you might have to swap this out. Now, the damage output is the same with Beast Trap as it is for putting Degeneration on, even though they're two completely different things. But if you have Guard and Degeneration at the same time, your damage will go higher. The demonstration I'm going to show you at the end is without Degeneration in the rotation and without someone guarding me. It's just with Beast Trap. With both, you can actually crack another 4k out of it. We'll get to that later. Next up is Liquid Lightning, or it's not actually, it's called Lightning Flood now. We changed this a while back. This is in the Stormcalling skill line. The third ability you unlock starts off as Lightning Splash. Morph it to Lightning Flood. This one puts a damage over time on the ground. It's all lightning. It does damage every 1 second, and people can take a synergy from this to do area of effect shock damage. So there's a bit of a theme here. It's not too obvious, I'm sure. This is lightning. This is lightning. This is lightning. And of course, this is lightning as well. And our front and back bar staves are both lightning. So we are doing an abundance of lightning damage, pushing for concussion, and having the extra ability to apply off balance with our Wall of Elements, which is essential for our setup. We need off balance in the fight, otherwise a lot of our damage actually goes down a significant amount. Next up is Thunderous Rage. This is the main ultimate I was talking about earlier that I tend to use over the other one. Starts off as Elemental Storm, morph it to Elemental Rage. It's called Thunderous Rage because we're using a lightning staff. It will be called different names if you have different elements of staves on your bar. Now, this is very simple. You put this down on the ground. It lasts for 9 seconds because lightning lasts 2 more seconds than fire does. And it does shock damage every second and destroys the room. Very simple. And also, it's a lot cheaper because of passives for us, but we're now going to get to those in a second. So, passives. Now, Dark Magic, of course, health, magic, and stamina costs of all your abilities are reduced by 6%. Your sustain is up. Get this. When you hit an enemy with a direct applied Dark Magic ability, you heal for 1922. This effect scales off of your maximum health, so obviously the higher the health, the more effective this is, and can occur once every 0.5 seconds. That applies to this. Your Daedric Tomb can heal you. After blocking an attack, your next magic, health, or stam ability costs 15% less. So if you are blocking, the next skill you use basically is cheaper. And when you cast a Dark Magic ability, you grant Minor Prophecy to you and your group, increasing your spell crit rating by 1320 for 20 seconds. So earlier, when I popped the potion and you saw that we had, was it 57.4% crit? Now, if I use a Dark Magic ability, 63.4. So you can see how these start stacking up. That is for you and your group. It's very important to note. Now, Daedric Summoning, this is important as well. You restore 1/4/5/2 Magicka when one of your Daedric Summoning pets is killed or unsummoned. That is entirely up to you. If your pet's dead, you're probably not paying too much attention. Most places the pet can't die anyway, but Maelstrom and PvP it can. So you can get this if you want to. It's not hugely essential, but it does obviously help if it happens. Reduces the cost of your ultimate abilities by 15%. That is nuts. Increases your health and stam recovery by 20% while a Daedric Summoning ability is slotted. We do have one on both bars, so we get that bonus all the time. The stam recovery is actually very beneficial for us because we are using a Beast Trap, which does cost stamina, and we want to keep our stamina healthy and up. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to block, dodge roll, and all that good stuff inside mechanics if we just wasted it all on the skill. Increases your max health by 8% while you have a Daedric Summoning pet active. Yes, we're tankier for having a pet on the bar. This increases our health. This is actually capped at a maximum of 60% health, so the higher this is, the stronger this is. And remember, the heal of this is based off of your max health from the passives, so having a higher health gives us a bigger heal from this as well. So it all balances out. Stormcorn is very, very important, of course. This increases your mag recovery by 10%. This increases your physical and shock damage by 5%. All the shock damage that we're doing, which is in abundance, is increased by 5% because the sorcerer excels at lightning or shock damage. Increases your damage done against enemies by 1% for every 10% current health they have. Now, this is a little confusing for most, but basically how this works is the higher the health, the more damage you do. So, while they're at 100% health, you do 10% more damage. While they're at 50%, you do 5%, and when they're at 10%, you do 1% more. So you always do more damage than your flat initially anyway without this passive, but it goes lower the lower the health goes. But that's where this kicks in, because this is your execute, and that's how you close the gap and start raising it back up again, because you do extra damage from this if the targets are low health, obviously, because that's the only way to apply it. This, of course, increases your weapon and spell damage by 2% for each sorcerer ability slotted. Now, remember I said this particular ultimate here can be swapped for this or this, and it's just there for stats. Well, this is the stat it's there for, that increased spell damage. As you can see here, there's a 10% bonus. That is because we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sorcerer abilities on the bar. That gives us a 10% overall. So either you have this one or this one, doesn't make any difference passively. Now, Destruction Staff, of course, you want to get every single one of these. Try Focus. We are using shock staves. If you do a heavy attack with a shock staff, the amount of damage you do to the target will actually spread and do the equivalent of 100% of the damage to surrounding enemies. Just bear in mind, of course, that's the flat damage. Regardless of multipliers, it's the actual overall flat amount that you successfully apply. Doesn't include the crit. The crit is applied to the main target. The surrounding targets get everything stacked up to the base before the crit applies. So if you do, say, 20k damage in heavy attacks flat out, that will do 20k to surrounding targets. If you do 30k because perhaps you crit, the surrounding targets will still get hit for the initial 20. But it's very, very strong indeed, and this does dramatically improve the performance of this particular build, because if you had a flame staff, yes, the flame staff would do more on a heavy attack, but the ticking damage from this actually spreads, and every tick it does damage rather than just initial hit and that's it. Your destruction staff abilities ignore 10% of the enemy spell resistance, so your light attacks, your heavy attacks, and your destruction staff skills, meaning Wall of Elements and your Destro ulti, will actually ignore resistances. Increases your chance to apply burning, concussion, and shield status effects. Now, we are using a lot of lightning. We have a heightened chance to apply concussion anyway because of the abundance of lightning in our skill rotation. And this, for having a destruction staff equipped, which we have on both bars, so no matter if we swap into different staves or not, we still get this benefit. So that helps push concussion, it helps push minor vulnerability, which is from that, and it helps push off balance. Now, we have a lightning staff equipped, so the benefit from that is that we increase the damage done with area of effect abilities. Now, just bear in mind, of course, our heavy attack counts as area of effect, so the damage done in area of effect is increased by 8%. Wall of Elements, Boundless Storms, Liquid Flood, or Liquid Lightning, or Lightning Flood. It's Lightning Flood, keep saying that wrong. And Thunderous Rage is all area of effect. As is Suppression Field, of course, if you have that running as well. And so is the Storm Atronach for some of his attacks. We have huge amounts of AoE, and we want to push it as far as possible. So we deliberately use 2 lightning staves. One on the back to make sure that we can apply as much off balance as possible, and one on the front to make sure that all of our area of effect is enhanced. When you kill an enemy with a destruction staff ability, so light attack, heavy attack, or skill, you restore 3600 Magicka. Light armor, of course, we are using 5 pieces of light armor, so we do benefit a lot from these. You have to have 5 pieces, by the way, to get these bottom 2. We are benefiting from reduced effectiveness of snares applied to us per piece worn, increase to max Magicka recovery and reduction to cost, increase of spell resistance per piece worn. This requires 5 and gives you a 10% crit chance, and this requires 5 and goes through 4884's resistances of the targets that you are hitting. So this is a very powerful bonus. You must have 5 pieces. If your armor breaks, you will lose these passives here, so make sure that you keep up on top of your repairs. We're using 1 piece of medium armor. You're not going to need all of these, especially not this, because it requires 5 pieces anyway, but the 2 I would recommend you get is this one here, Windwalker, so your stam recovery is enhanced and reduction to cost is there. We are using 1 stam ability. We want to take any minor bonuses that we can. And of course, athletics is helpful because we do want to make sure that we get the cost of dodge roll down as well, so that can counterplay into our sustain for our beast trap. Now, this is very important, of course, but you don't need these 2. These 2 require 5 pieces. This increases your resistance per piece of heavy worn. This increases your health recovery, which is irrelevant because we're vampire anyway. But you do restore 108 Magicka and stamina when you take damage once every 4 seconds for the piece worn, and this increases your max health. Remember, we do actually have some skills that scale off of max health. We don't need soul magic because we're not using it. Fighters Guild, of course, you do need these passives. We are using the Beast Trap. This gives us a 15% reduction to cost. We have reduction to cost elsewhere anyway, but this actually stacks on top of it, which is nice. Remember, reduction to cost is multiplicative, not additive, but that's irrelevant. The fact is, this does reduce the cost of this. This will increase the weapon damage for each Fighters Guild ability on your bar. Now, we only have it on the back bar, so it's not that important, but it will increase the strength of it if you want that tiny, tiny, tiny increase, but it's not really worth the skill points, unless you've got them spare, in which case go nuts. This you will want. You are going to kill massive amounts of enemies in area of effect. The room is going to get nuked, and if you kill Undead, Daedra, or Werewolf, for each one that you kill, you get 9 ultimate back. That means that you can use your ultimate again very, very quickly. Make sure you get this passive. This one increases the damage output of Fighters Guild abilities if they hit Undead, Daedra, or Werewolves. Again, the Beast Trap itself is not massively beneficial damage-wise. It's just the buff we really want it for, but if you've got the spare skill point, why not? It's not going to hurt. Mage's Guild is not that important. We're not using Meteor on the front bar because we didn't want the bonus from this skill line for that particular skill. We wanted the spell damage increase. The bonus is here. All Mage's Guild abilities on your bar will give you an additional 2% increase to max recovery and max Magicka. This does benefit from this. Inner Light does get boosted, which is great. So instead of the 5% there, we've actually got 7. You could get a further 2% here with Ice Comet or Meteor by putting it on your ultimate slot and just leaving it there for passives, but the actual damage output was more beneficial having the 2% spell damage from this sorcerer ability than it was having the Meteor. So Inner Light is great for getting this passive, but you don't actually need Mage's Guild 10 for the Meteor on this particular setup, unless of course you want to. Undaunted is incredibly important. If you take a synergy, you get 4% of all resources back. I don't need to be too obvious in my explanation for that. It helps your sustain. Every single synergy in the game will be beneficial to you no matter what, and for every one you take, here is some free resources. This will increase your max health, max magic, and max stamina for each type of armor worn. We are wearing 1 heavy, 1 medium, and 5 light, so we've got 3 different types of armor, 3 different weights, and that increases our overall stats by 6%. We are, of course, a high elf still. This is very important. While you're trying to channel your pet, that does have a channel time, so you will benefit from this reduction to damage while using it. The rest of the time, you won't get it. But if you are stuck short and you have to recast it, that will help a little bit. But the main part is, if you use a class ability, and we will be all the time, you will actually gain 640 magic or stamina, depending on whichever the 2 bars is lowest. Now, our lowest bar is actually our stamina. And we're, of course, using a beast trap, which comes from stamina. And just for using a class skill, even a damage shield, we can actually get stamina back. So we've got reduction to cost, we've got nice recovery, and we get stamina back for doing our rotation, which means the beast trap itself is really easy to sustain as long as you don't overspam it. This increases your max magic by 2k, and this increases your spell damage by 258. You can choose any race you like, but for flat damage output, flat stats, and return to stamina while using skills of your class skill line, I chose the high elf. It did perform higher than most in most situations, but then again, you can choose anything you like, and you might just have to jiggle some stats to make it work a little bit more efficiently for you. Essentially, you can use anything you like. It's not going to break the build. It will still work. There might just be 1 or 2k difference, which is actually nothing. Alchemy is very, very important. Of course, you want to max out this skill line as fast as you possibly can. You don't have to keep your skills in here if you don't want to, but I would recommend 3 points in medicinal use, because if you are using potions, you will have a 30% increase to their duration. Now, potions are consumable buffs. Do not let your buffs run out. So keep them running all the time. Don't run out of juice, then use a potion, and then wonder where it's all going, because it will go really fast. You need to keep these up 100% of the time. Remember, they have recovery and all that good stuff in them. You want to keep up your recovery, not just utilize it when you've got 1k magic left. Now, the potion choices are literally up to you. You can choose to use spell pots if you want, if you're not using perhaps degeneration or crit surge on this bar. Or you can use crit surge or degeneration to always have major sorcery anyway, or you might have a DK in your group because they can give it to you too. And you can then benefit from tripods, which will give you health, magic, and stamina, and recovery to all 3. Now we're going to go into the gear. How many people are crapping their pants thinking that things have changed? Well, lucky for you, they haven't. Undaunted Infiltrator, Lightning Staff still performed incredibly well. This will increase your max magic, and weapon crit. The weapon crit is useless, but it'll make your beast trap hit a little bit harder occasionally if you want, but that's a dumb trait for now. And when you use an ability that costs magic, which we will, your light attacks deal an additional 774 damage, and heavy attacks deal an additional 1161 damage for 10 seconds. So use one magic ability, you get a buff that lasts for 10 seconds, and all light attacks and heavy attacks are boosted. Simple as that. It boosts the flat damage of the heavy attacks, and then you can crit on top of that, which is great. Now, this is a medium set. So what we're doing is we're actually using a staff, which counts as 2 pieces, and we're using 3 jewelry, which is 2 bloodthirsty and 1 infused. That way, we don't have any robust on here for the extra stamina. We don't have any medium armor. This is effectively now a light set for us. So make sure it's a jewelry and 1 weapon on the front bar only. You cast a spell, it gives you a buff, it stays with you. You can swap bars and it'll stay with you. Just make sure that you fight on your front bar for the most part of the rotation. That'll be explained in a moment. Maelstrom Lightning Staff on the back bar with a shock glyph, and it has to be infused. Now, this stacks with this. This gives you light and heavy attack increase. This, if any enemies are inside your wall of elements, those targets will be hit harder by your light and heavy attacks. This bonus here, 1341, alongside this bonus here at the bottom, they stack together at base on a heavy or light attack, and the crit on top will obviously be higher. Now, this doesn't have to be here. If you don't have access to it yet, then you can put a willpower weapon on the back bar, or a crafted weapon, or anything of your choice, whatever you have access to for now. Do not double bar this. There's no point. You cast it, you swap, it's still with you. You put it on the back bar, you get no bonuses at all for having 2 of the same. So this back bar one needs to be different no matter what. Maelstrom Lightning Staff is going to obviously optimize the bonuses for your light and heavy attacks, but if you don't have it now, willpower or crafted is fine. There's 2 choices for monster sets. We are using Xan at the moment on the helmet and shoulders for single target. This will give you a crit bonus, and it will do a massive flame beam for 5 seconds, getting progressively stronger every single tick, and then I have a 13-second gap before it can be reapplied again. It says 18-second cooldown, I know, but it starts from the initial hit. Now, you can utilize this as much as you like, but this is mostly for single target because it doesn't hit multiple targets. Now, if you want to focus on the AoE side of the build, which will benefit, of course, from your lightning stuff, you can instead use Groftar, which is much, much easier to get. So if you're starting out on this build, you haven't done Scale Caller yet, get into Vaults of Madness, grab yourself a set of this, and you're good to go. In fact, a lot of the time, you might actually preference this. Because this does fire damage in an area of effect every 1 second for 5 seconds and at a 5-second cooldown, the actual proc rate is much faster. The damage output, although Xan is very high on single target, is actually really, really close, because this can be awkward and sometimes not want to fire, whereas this is borderline guaranteed to fire once every 10 seconds for 5 seconds. This does increase your max Magicka instead of your crit chance, but it's entirely up to you which one you preference. Inside Maelstrom, dungeons, and even some trials, especially in massive trash pulls, Groftar is amazing. Single target, though, if you've just got one target, which is very, very rare, mostly there's usually an ad at least somewhere. If you have got one target alone, that's when you might want to use Xan instead, but you can hit the same numbers with Groftar occasionally. Again, the choice is yours. But the helmet and shoulders, you want heavy and medium. Now, the body pieces is the same as before, and I'm going to explain the same as I always have done, because this needs to be understood, because people are just ignoring facts here. This increases your spell crit rating, so higher chance to crit. Yes, a healer or a DPS can benefit from that. Gains minus Slayer at all times, increasing your damage done to dungeon, trial, and arena monsters by 5%. That's a damage buff. Increases spell damage. That helps us. Of course, you can increase your heals or damage with that. Spell crit for the 5-piece. So ignore the next 5-piece bonus. The 5-piece bonus gives us flat out a crit bonus, which again, heals or damage. Now the last part, your heavy attacks deal an additional 903 damage. Enemies you damage with a fully charged heavy attack are affected with minor vulnerability for 10 seconds, increasing the damage they take by 8%. We have a very high uptime on minor vulnerability anyway, from all of our concussion procs, from all of our lightning damage, which is chance, but we have a high uptime on it. This, on top of it, for free, guarantees that, as long as we keep up our rotation. However, we are not using it for the minor vulnerability bonus, since we already have a lot of it. We're using it for the 903 heavy attack damage. Look at that very carefully. Increases your heavy attack damage. This here increases your light and heavy attack damage. This, for being in Wall of Elements, increases your heavy attack and light attack damage. This increases your heavy attack damage. Off-balance heavy attacks increases your heavy attack damage by 70%, and all of our damage done by a heavy attack is area of effect and hits surrounding targets. Everything combined is to boost the crap out of your heavy attack alongside the rest of your rotation being passively buffed by flat stats and crit chance. This is designed this way on purpose, and it works. Now, all you need to do is basically put down your dots and keep up your heavies inside your rotation. And the rotation is coming after the champion points. Now, we're going to go over traits really quickly just in case you missed them. Precise on the front with an increased weapon and spell damage. Shock on the back on infused. This can be changed to a flame staff if somebody in your group is already pumping out more off balance than you can count and you don't need the lightning staff. That is entirely up to you. So in some situations you can change this to a flame staff, but for most situations, since you're the one bringing that off balance anyway, you want to stick with a lightning staff. That 100% depends on your group. The demonstration, of course, will be shown with a flame staff, showing a higher wall of elements, but that is pretty much it. If you don't have a shock staff, you aren't supplying off balance, you won't get the extra benefit from your heavy attacks, your build will actually do less damage. Just bear that in mind. Now, divines on everything, spell damage on all 3 jewelry with bloodthirsty twice and infused. So if you missed that, there you go. Now, we're going to go into champion points. We'll do the red stuff again first, like I usually do. It's pretty much the same as my other builds. You can change this depending on the content. This is up to you, but this is a good starting point for pretty much everything. 72 points into Ironclad to reduce the amount of direct damage you take by 23%. 64 and 64 in Hardy and Elemental Defender to make sure that we reduce all other damage, well, actually all damage by 13% flat out. 51 into Thick Skin to reduce damage over time by 19%, and we do have Unchained, which means if you use the Beast Trap, you will, of course, spend stamina, but if you break free first and then use the Beast Trap, the stamina cost is 80% less. 90 points in quick recovery for increased healing received. And of course we get the field physician passive, which means if you resurrect someone, you will take less damage while that channel is actually active. 44 into break free, so you've got 17% reduction to break free cost there. 75 in tenacity to increase the amount of return we get from our heavy attacks, which is already nuts. 75 into magic recovery as well, just to keep our recovery up. And 72 into tumbling to reduce the cost of dodge roll, and 4 into shadow ward. Shadow ward is not really something that we're really speccing into overall. That way we have 75 points plus in this tree, which gives us the treasure hunter passive, meaning our treasure chests that we open will give us higher quality loot by chance. This will increase your crit damage by 21%, 161 points in here. 64 into elemental expert to increase all of the damage that we're actually doing by 13%. 9 into spell erosion. There is a cap on resistances for enemies. We actually hit them on the nose if you have all buffs and bonuses applied, with 9 points into here. 50 points into staff expert, increasing all of our light and heavy attacks by 26%, which is enormous. Master at Arms does increase our direct damage, so that's going to help our light attacks and our mines as well. This is 1 because we do have a lot of damage over time, including our channel from our heavy attack. And above all, if an enemy is off balance, and they will be with this build, you will do 10% more damage. That does stack with the 70% you do with your heavy attacks for being off balance in the first place. Very strong indeed. Now the rotation, this can be quite simple actually. Although it will take a bit of practice, and you will have to make sure that you do everything in the right order and speed over time. It will take a little bit of getting used to. So, first of all, you want to make sure your beast trap is on the ground if you can help it. And you always want to make sure that your buff is running. You want to make sure that your Boundless Storms is always on. And then you start like this. Lightning on the ground, light attack wall of elements, swap bars. Then, light attack mines. Heavy attack, mines again. Heavy attack, activate your pet, swap bars. Really want that active before the fight starts, actually. Once you're on the back bar, you do the same again. Lightning, but you want to keep your beast trap up. So, it's lightning, light attack, beast trap, light attack, wall, swap. Light mines, heavy mines, heavy pet, swap back again. Every single time you go to the back bar, you will be doing liquid lightning. Can't get used to that name. Lightning flood. Light attack, beast trap, light attack, wall, swap. Every single time. But if your Boundless Storms is off, you want to squeeze that in. So that would be lightning, light trap, light buff, light wall, swap. Come back again. This time you don't cast it. Lightning, beast trap, wall, swap. So alternate your rotation. Every second rotation, you cast this. Every rotation, you cast your Beast Trap. Now, if you choose to use different abilities, if you choose not to use Beast Trap, and you choose to use Degeneration instead, maybe you're being guarded, or maybe you just preference it, this will need to be cast every rotation, just like Beast Trap is, so that rotation doesn't change a bit. However, if you are using Power Surge, or Crit Surge even, this will be used every other, and the Boundless will be used every other. So just bear that in mind so that you can actually have a really healthy rotation. If you're using Crit Surge, you need that active to start with in the fight. One rotation will be like Crit Surge, like Wall Swap. Blah, 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 blah. Mines and all the good stuff. Come back. Like Boundless, like Wall Swap. No Crit Surge. Next time you come round, Lightning, like Crit Surge, like Wall Swap. Next time, Lightning, like Boundless, like Wall Swap. You alternate. One rotation, one the other. One rotation, one the other. That's only if you choose that option though. However, the rest of the time, Beast Trap every single rotation, this every second. If you do cast both of them every single rotation, it's not the end of the world, but just bear in mind, of course, your rotation will suffer a little bit and your damage will be altered. This will take a bit of practice, but this is very simple in terms of its overall application. There are many rotations out there that can be very, very tricky to master. Just pay attention to what you're doing, keep it in the same order, and don't deviate from it unless you really have to. Now, just remember, of course, the pet doesn't do additional damage under 50% health of the target. So if that target here is under 50% health, stop casting him, and instead of pet, then swap, just throw in an extra mines. So that would make your rotation light attack mines, heavy mines, heavy mines, swap. When the target hits 20% or lower, that's when you get to choose what you want to do. Basically, you can still keep doing this exactly the same if you want. It will be very, very strong because your Bloodthirsty will start kicking in. Or you can simply light attack and Mage's Wrath 5 times. Swap bars, carry on with your rotation as normal. Then come back and do it again. Keep doing it. Or you can heavy attack and Mage's Wrath if you are low or if you see the target go off balance. There are options, but the main idea is to keep your rotation exactly the same until certain checkpoints. 50% and under, change the pet to mines. 20% and under, start throwing out this to execute stuff. Apart from that, keep it exactly the same all the time. Keep your buffs up. Above all, keep this wall down. You want that off balance because you want this massive heavy attack bonus. Now we're going to give you a quick demonstration of what that actually looks like on the large dummy, because I know people are not quite sure how these stack on bonuses work. Now, this is a basic heavy attack. You see 11k crits. Now, we will do that with off balance, which is now coming. 15. We got some non-crits there, but 16 at most. Now we'll activate our Undaunted Infiltrator after the off balance is ready to be used again. So activate it, then heavy. That gives us a 16k, 23 there, 23.9. Now, we'll put down Wall of Elements inside off balance. So Wall of Elements, off balance, Undaunted Infiltrator, Glyph. 31.8. Undaunted Infiltrator increases your lights and heavies. Ether increases your heavies rather. Wall of Elements from the Maelstrom weapon increases your lights and heavies, and they all stack together, and then off balance increases it by a further 70%. And this is what it looks like in area of effect. Hit the off balance target, everybody gets splashed. Makes a huge difference. Anyway, hopefully that helped. Hopefully that wasn't too boring. If you do have any trouble with this and you do realize that you're not hitting the numbers that I'm hitting, it is all down to practice, and make sure you've got everything where it should be. I know I've seen a lot of messages recently where like, oh, I've got everything perfect. No, you probably haven't. Rotation, practice is key. Get everything in the right order first and then get your timing right. Remember, you must not miss your light attacks on the back bar because they do count for a lot of your extra damage. Now, there must be a light attack before this if you can help it, but if you miss it, it's not the end of the world. But between your other skills, make sure they land. So first of all, thank you all very, very much for watching. I hugely appreciate the support. If you are not subscribing already, please do hit that button. It is free. Don't forget to hit the notification bell, of course, as well, just so you know when I'm uploading videos. And of course, if you want to help support outside the channel, there are some links in the info section below for Patreon, Twitter, Facebook, and of course the website XynodeGaming.com, where all the written guides are. Don't forget, of course, I do also live stream on Twitch every day from 10 PM UK time onwards, unless I say otherwise on Twitter. Once again, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.